Plants vs. Zombies and its sequels have spanned over a decade of continuous development, with the cast of plants being drastically changed and altered over time to meet the demands of new games and updates. Often, analysing how plants have changed over time really puts into perspective just how much the franchise has changed in its over 15-year run. The plant we're looking at today is Blover. And man, I bet this plant wishes it had an extra leaf, because it's had one of the unluckiest histories of any plant throughout the mainline tower defense games. Blover used to be one of the most broken plants in the franchise, and somehow it ended up being demoted from being a plant entirely. But what exactly made Blover so unlucky? Well, there's only one way to find out, so let's analyze the history of Plants vs. Zombies' unluckiest plant. In the original Plants vs. Zombies, it was humble beginnings for Blover. Blover was a single-use instant plant that costed 100 sun. Its main ability was to blow the fog off the lawn in the fog stage to allow the player to see what the hell they were doing. But unlike another plant we'll get to soon, Blover would only remove the fog from the screen for 24 seconds, rather than permanently. However, Blover also had a secondary ability, which was its ability to blow balloon zombies off the lawn every time you used it. This would permanently destroy the balloon zombies by blowing them away. Blover did a solid job with both of these purposes, but it wasn't unique in either of them. This is because both of these functions were carried out by other plants, which were arguably more efficient at doing so. These were plantain for clearing fog, and cactus for popping balloons. Neither of these plants were instant or single use, making them a more reliable and long-term option for doing either of the tasks Blover could do. Either, not both. You see, Blover wasn't unique in being able to clear fog and pop balloons, but it definitely was unique at being able to do both. Since using Blover for both of these purposes saved you a seed slot over bringing a cactus and a plantain individually, Blover was a pretty efficient alternative to those two. This is magnified by the fact that plantain and cactus are basically useless outside of the aforementioned abilities that Blover could do anyway. This multifaceted use of Blover made it a staple in the fog stage of the adventure mode, where for just 100 sun a pop it could efficiently remove fog and get rid of any balloon zombies. Even though plantain could keep fog away permanently, the 24-second time that Blover blew the fog away was still quite generous, and was more than enough to work with. As for cactus, that was one of the worst plants in the game, if not the worst, so the bar wasn't set very high for Blover to outperform it. If you were gonna waste a seed slot countering balloon zombies, you were far better off bringing a plant that could also blow away fog to justify the waste of a seed slot. Unfortunately though, since it was unlocked so late in the game, Blover's usage in this mode was hindered as there were no balloon zombies or fog in the subsequent roof levels. This meant that, on a first playthrough, you could only use Blover for a handful of levels before shafting it. In the non-endless survival modes, Blover was similar in usefulness for the fog stages since the balloon zombies and fog were still prevalent. However, unlike the adventure mode, Blover is useful outside of the fog stage too. This is because rather than being exclusive to fog levels, balloon zombies had a chance of appearing in every hard stage's survival mode as well as the normal roof mode. This made Blover a useful tool for countering balloon zombies when they appeared in the survival hard modes especially. It's also important to note for the post-game that the player would likely have brought a cattail, which serves as an alternative counter to balloons. Cattail didn't completely outclass Blover in every aspect, especially since it could only be used in pool and fog stages, but it was a very good plant in its own right. Blover was also just as decent an option in survival endless, since balloon zombies had a chance of appearing just like in the survival hard modes. However, it's important to note that the survival endless was only available in the pool stage, so Cattail was more of a competitor to fill Blover's role. But again, Cattail didn't make Blover useless in any sense, it was more down to personal preference or the fact that if you had Cattail in your strategy anyway, you wouldn't need to use Blover. This is the part of the video where I'd talk about Blover's place in the console and DS versus modes, but Blover was actually disabled in these modes. Why would Blover be disabled but not plantain or flower pot? I don't know, but it is what it is, so let's move on. Plants vs. Zombies 2 released in 2013, bringing back many of the plants from the first game, and Blover was not one of them. It wasn't until March of 2014, just under a year after launch, that Blover would be finally added to the game. Blover was added as part of the Far Future update, made to counter the new flying zombies added in the same world. These were the jetpack zombies and disco jetpack zombies. Blover remained fairly unchanged in the jump between games, except for one aspect which we'll get to soon. But its ability to remove fog wasn't brought over because, well, there's no fog in Plants vs. Zombies 2. However, to compensate for this, its sunk cost was halved from 100 to 50. zombie. This made Blover insanely cheap, especially since the 50 sun metal was introduced in the game, meaning that Blover only consumed 1 sun drop rather than the 4 it took in Plants vs Zombies 1. This, in combination with Blover's incredibly fast 5-second recharge time, made it a must-bring plant for many far future levels, especially to counter Discotron mechs. The one major change they made to Blover was a physics change from Plants vs Zombies 1 to Plants vs Zombies 2 that allowed Blover to blow away all zombies in the air, not just specifically flying zombies. What do I mean by this? Well, zombies like Jetpack Zombie and Seagull Zombie are flying zombies, but some non-flying zombies can be airborne too. Perhaps the most obvious example is when an imp is being launched or when a swashbuckler is swinging. Even though these zombies aren't naturally flying, they can still be blown away by Blover in their airborne state. This wasn't possible at all in the first game, and it wouldn't take long for players to find out how they could abuse this new mechanic to completely break the game. This was possible due to, ironically, one of the most unassuming plants in the game, Spring Bean. Even though Spring Bean has basically always been the laughingstock of plants, its ability to synergize with the new airborne zombie mechanics has always been its one redeeming factor, and a huge redeeming factor at that. When you use Spring Bean, it bounces 1 zombie back. The way the zombie is bounced back causes it to be momentarily airborne. I think you know where I'm going with this. A well-timed Blover can basically insta-kill any zombie bounced by Spring Bean, even a whole-ass Gargantua. This is already really solid, but not to the completely game-breaking extent that I alluded to earlier. That's because there was one more piece to the Spring Bean Blover combo, plant food. When you use a plant food on a Spring Bean, it bounces every zombie on the board. So yeah, combine that with a Blover and you had the Exodia combo of Plants vs Zombies 2. To say this combo was OP would be an absolutely blasphemous understatement. First of all, Blover and Spring Bean combined costed a total of 100 sun, so all you needed to pull this off was 2 drops of sun and a plant food. And the timing was pretty generous, so as long as you had a little bit of practice and more bodily coordination than the President of the United States, it wasn't hard to pull off every time with ease. What's more is that Blover's 5-second recharge time allowed you to spam this combo as much as you desired, provided you had the plant food necessary to do so and protected your Spring Bean. I think it's fair to say that this combo was not intended by the devs, a point which I'll elaborate on later. With the introduction of Dark Ages and Big Wave Beach across the rest of the year, no new flying zombies were added to the game. However, this didn't impact Blover's usefulness at all, because the Spring Bean tech was still possible, so you could wipe out whole levels with it regardless of if the zombies were flying or not. That being said, players that didn't use the Spring Bean tech would still benefit from Frostbite Caves updates in early 2015, as the Dodo zombie was added, which was the first new zombie that Blover could blow away without help of Spring Bean since its introduction. In addition, Childguard's ability to bounce zombies back was similar to Spring Beans, so it could be combined with Blover in the same way, but its plant food ability was far inferior to Spring Beans. Not everything was looking up for Blover though, because the new Gemium plant Hurricane was introduced with this world. Hurricane was a very powerful plant in its own right, and could blow away all flying and airborne zombies in one single lane. However, since it could only blow one lane at a time, it didn't replace Blover, which was still the go-to plant for blowing away zombies. Regardless, if you weren't running Spring Bean, Blover wasn't really worth bringing into any of these new worlds apart from Far Future. The Dodos were easily manageable in Frostbite Caves without the need for Blover. But with the introduction of Lost City later that year, bug zombies would be introduced to the game. These came in normal Conehead and Buckethead forms, which were all flying. By blowing these guys away, especially the Buckethead ones, you could get insane value from just one Blover. Lost City Part 2 added the Relic Hunter zombies, who were equally as valuable to blow away. And of course the Spring Bean tech was also there to break the whole world still. 2015 would turn out to be an otherwise uneventful year for Blover, since there were no flying zombies introduced. However, a few interactions did bounce zombies in the air, such as Breakdancer Zombie and a few of the dinosaurs in Jurassic Marsh. Oh yeah, and also Primal P's knockback causes zombies to be considered airborne momentarily. Why? I don't know. Hey, so this is Future Koala here, and while I was editing this video, I realized I absolutely did not do enough justice to just how OP this Primal P Blover combo is. And for reasons we'll get to soon, it's also important to tell you that this is possible in the game still in the current version, so this absolutely makes Blover a way better plan than it would be otherwise. Anyway, back to it. Modern Day was released at the start of 2016, including Blover's original lock and key counterpart, Balloon Zombie. However, Balloon Zombie had some changes across games that meant Blover wasn't a necessity to counter it anymore, since regular plants could now hit it. To make up for this, Balloon Zombie was given a lot more HP, so Blover was still one of the best ways to deal with them. And of course, throughout all these years, somehow Blover's game-breaking Spring Bean tech was never addressed by the devs. However, this would all change as Plants vs Zombies 2 would move on to the modern versions. Blover ended the classic period of Plants vs Zombies 2 as probably the most game-breaking plant in the game, not to mention its incredible utility even without abusing the Spring Bean combo. This would only become more apparent as more flying zombies would be added to the game as part of the world expansion updates in 2017, including the Pelican and Blastronaut zombies, which were tankier and faster versions of their normal counterparts. Obviously, neither of those stat increases bothered Blover, who could still insta-kill them just as easily as every other flying zombie. The start of 2018 though would spell the end of Blover's dominance in Plants vs Zombies 2 and the start of Blover's string of awful luck. As the game progressed out of adventure mode updates, it started to lean completely into the new PvP Battles game mode, now called Arena. Up until this point, the game had been purely single player oriented, so for the first time, players had to compete against each other and use the best strategy for a tactical advantage. What does any of this have to do with Blover though? Well, as you could probably guess, since players needed to find optimal strategies to beat each other's scores, the Blover Spring Bean tech would start to see very high usage in the arena game mode. Not only was this combo cheap in terms of sunk cost and easy to pull off, but both plants needed were completely free and unlocked from the adventure mode. This created the perfect conditions for the Blover Spring Bean tech to absolutely take over the arena, and PopCap would inevitably take notice. On the 1st of May 2018, as part of the Power Mints update, Blover's compatibility with Spring Bean was removed entirely, apparently due to its dominance in the arena mode. Blover could still blow away flying zombies and airborne zombies, but not from Spring Bean. Why would PopCap sweep this problem under the rug for over 4 years before addressing it? Well, before the arena update, the Spring Bean tech was still relatively unknown and pretty over the top for the adventure mode. It was only when Arena was introduced that the Spring Bean tech would become hugely popular for a few reasons. First was the fact that Spring Bean and Blover are free and easy to unlock for everyone, as I mentioned before. Second was the fact that optimal strategies became far more important and popular due to the competitive multiplayer point scoring aspects. And lastly, the strategy just broke Arena completely, even more so than adventure mode, due to the mechanics of Arena. Arena works by progressively buffing the zombie's stats, including health, to naturally make zombies harder to kill as you get further into the level. This is why when you're playing Arena or Penny's Pursuit, it can sometimes take ages to kill just one basic zombie or conehead when you're at the tail end of the level. This is obviously just to encourage players to buy premium plants or spend resources chasing CDMs and leveling up your plants. But why would you waste your money upgrading your plants and buying premium plants to take down those hyper buff zombies when you could just spam 2 free plants you unlock from the start of the game? So yeah, the reason why they eventually bothered patching this combo was because of money, long story short. Regardless, the patch severely hurt Blover's dominance and did a good job of balancing it back down to the solid flying zombie removal tool that it was intended to be. But all was not lost for Blover, because in the very same update as the Spring Bean tech patch, a new plant that did basically the same thing was introduced. Reinforcement. Reinforcement's active ability was basically the same as Spring Bean's boost. It bounced all zombies in the air. However, Reinforcement was only an instant plant and could only be used once every 85 seconds. So at most you could only wipe the whole board with Blover a few times per level when previously you could spam it to your heart's content. Apart from that, Blover still had synergies with Charge Guard, Primal Pea Shooter and Holy Barrier among others. Was Blover still a strong plant? Yes. Was it a game-breaking plant? Definitely not. The following years would be rather uneventful for Blover, leaving it up for question whether Blover would continue on a downward trajectory or if it would be revitalized in some way. This question would finally be answered with the release of the current version of Plants vs Zombies 3. Plants vs Zombies 3 released with a cast comprised of mostly returning plants, and Blover was one of them. So was Blover as game-breaking as it was early on in Plants vs Zombies 2? Nope, not even close. In fact, its appearance in Plants vs Zombies 3 is barely even an appearance at all. The only time you can use Blover is when a zombie is about to reach your house and this message pops up. Yes, Blover has officially been demoted to Power Up status. It seems that PopCap wanted to continue the trend of Blover's downward spiral, and I've gotta say, they did a damn good job at that. Basically, what Blover does in this game is it blows away all zombies on a lawn if you pay coins as a way of bailing you out of a bad situation, just like the security guards from Penny's Pursuit in the last game. And that's all there is to say about Blover in this game, really. Pretty disappointing for any Blover fans out there like myself. But hey, at least Blover has an appearance at all, which is something that can't be said about the hundreds of other plants that have been shafted from the cast. From its humble beginnings in Plants vs Zombies 1 to its game-breaking launch into Plants vs Zombies 2, Blover had a serious string of bad luck ever since 2018. While it was still a good plant towards the end of Plants vs Zombies 2's timeline, Plants vs Zombies 3 basically demoted it entirely of its plant status. It really is a shame because if flying zombies ever make their way into Plants vs Zombies 3, Blover is already being used as a power-up, so its original role will be likely replaced entirely. And that's about it for Blover. Let me know if you guys like these kind of plant history videos by dropping a like and leaving a comment. And also a quick update on why this video took so long and why I'm yet to make the video I've been alluding to for a while. Basically, I kind of wanted to pursue this video idea that I didn't think would take that long, but it's turning out to be one of my biggest videos ever. And that was originally going to be the next video I was going to upload, but I didn't really want to take a whole month or two straight of just making one video and leaving you guys without content, so I decided to make this video first. But the longer video is in the works, and the Plants vs Zombies 1 challenge video will come out after that video because it kind of needs that video to establish the rules of the challenge and everything. It'll all make sense when they all come out. I hope you guys like this one, and I'll try and make the next video as fast as I can.